Hi everyone, I'm Vernon Kay with a brand new edition of Tracks of My Years, and I'm about to go on a fascinating 10-song musical journey with guitar legend Johnny Marr. And I don't say this lightly, but this might be my favourite ever Tracks of My Years. Johnny formed his first band at the age of 13 with Andy Rourke, who he left home with at 15. Andy, of course, became the bass player of The Smiths. The Smiths formed in 1982, and Johnny's guitar playing became synonymous with the band's sound, a sound that's earned him a place as one of the most iconic and influential guitarists of all time. After the band split, Johnny embarked on multiple projects, including working with the Pretenders, Talking Heads, Beck, Oasis and the Pet Shop Boys, with the collaboration linking him together with Nile Rodgers. Johnny's just released his first solo compilation, Spirit Power, The Best of Johnny Marr. Plus, he's released the book, Marr's Guitars, and we'll hear about both of those as our chat progresses. But let's get into Tracks of My Years with Johnny's first choice, which is Eddie Cochran, and Come On Everybody.
Oh, well, come on everybody, and let's get together tonight.
So there you go, everyone knows that. Why is that special to you?
It's special because when I was a little kid, I grew up in a younger Irish family. My parents were young, that is, when I was born, me and my sister. And over the years, when people know that I grew up in an Irish family, they have this assumption. I'm always asked whether my parents used to play Irish music and the idea of like the Chieftains or whatever it is. But they absolutely didn't. If anything, they were sort of rebelling against that because they were young, right? And they'd moved over from Kildare to Manchester, and they were really into rock and roll. And Come On Everybody there was a number of records that, as a little boy, I started to twig had guitar on that were built on guitars. Because some of those old rock and roll records, a lot of them were built on piano, Little Richard and all of that stuff. But the Eddie Cochran records and the Everly Brothers records were the first ones that really grabbed my attention because I really loved the sound of them. And they, in a way, in modern parlance, Eddie Cochran doubled down, really. He kind of went, right, if we're going to have acoustic guitars on it, let's have them really loud. And the riff that you hear there, the which, you know, to us now, 50 years later, he kind of invented that, really. And put it in the culture. They were my really early memories of being excited about music. My parents and my aunties and uncles, hard-working people, I have to say, but when they parted and let their hair down, they really had a good time. So me and my sister would be, you know, whatever, 5, 6, 7, watching these young adults jiving and really ripping it up, and the music was super exciting. So I thought that Eddie Cochran song kind of has it all, really. It sort of is personifies that time for me.
And was music on all the time? Because since I've started doing Tracks of My Years, I realised that especially with musicians, in particular creative musicians, writers, producers, music seems to always have been in the background at a very early age. That was kind of the bait that was dangling for that young, energetic person to go, bang, I'm having that, and grab it.
Yeah, that is the case in my house, but in all honesty, it was in the foreground. My parents were like, John, listen to this. My mother would
Oh, really? They were pushing music upon you?
They're still like that now.
Are they?
I'm not joking. Since my mum discovered YouTube and my dad discovered country western podcasts, they are genuinely like that. And I love that. I think it's so brilliant.
How old were you when you picked up your first guitar?
I had a toy one when I was 5, and then my dad took me to get a proper acoustic that I could play chords on when I was 8. And so then by 9...
Was it Bert Weedon Playing a Day, or...?
I did have that Bert Weedon book, funny enough, yeah. I did have that, and there's a reason loads of musicians had that book, because it's pretty valid, you know, it's a pretty clever book. And then I had a couple of bits of just regular sort of sheet music, but I learnt from playing along with records, and by that time I had a little brother. He came along, and his job was to put his finger on the record player to slow it down. I'm from that age. That's where I'm at.
It's brilliant.
And he'd love having that job. And I'd say, okay, so I'd have this Sparks record, and amateur hour by Sparks. I'm trying to work it out, so I'd have to slow it down. And come on, Ian. So my brother would put his finger on it to slow it down. Yeah,
they're good memories, those, aren't they? Like brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, my family treated music like it was a religion. I know it sounds a big statement, but they treated religion like it was religion as well. From Irish Catholic, right? But absolutely obsessed with bands and music and all of that. So I had a really good grounding in it.
You've picked the next one is the Hollies and Bus Stop. Why have you picked this?
So I was born in 63, so I was into all these different records. My mother used to stand me on a chair with my face, so facing the radio, and then she'd put the radio on, and then she'd go and do her work, her chores and everything for a couple of hours. And I've had to check this with her, right? Like, whether I'm, is this just mythologising? And she said, oh, no. And I said, I was 6. And she was like, yeah, but I knew where you were. You were just glued to the radio. So I used to just look into the radio. So there's loads of these bands that we all know from artists, Dusty Springfield and all these records that are very evocative. But it seemed like of 60s guitar bands, other than the Beatles, in my life anyway, the Hollies kind of personified the 60s. And they had this really killer guitar player called Tony Hicks. He sounded great, and he looked great as well because he was young. And he was like one of the early kind of guitar heroes that I had, really. Yeah.
Have you got many?
Do you know what? I've got a sort of staple of about 5 or 6 go-tos that I can tell you. The first real major one was Mark Bolan. And then, as I say, the Hollies, Tony Hicks. I jumped into Rory Gallagher, and then it was Bert Jansch, and then James Williamson from the Stooges. So, like most musicians, I can list all these guitar players who would be here all afternoon. But the ones that I was a sort of real big fan of, I made a really big deal of it. I became like an expert at what those guys did, and that was... And Joni Mitchell as well, actually, not just guys. Nile Rodgers was another one. So we're talking later in my life now, when my sister, who was a big fan of disco music, she turned me on to Chic, and I not only related to the way Nile Rodgers played the guitar, and actually, if we're going to get technical about it, with Nile Rodgers, people...
Please do.
Well, people know... So if you think of Nile Rodgers, people think of that rhythm.
Ding-a-ding-ding-ding.
Yeah, they're thinking the rhythm.
Yeah.
Well, what I always say is about Niall, like, amazingly, we've become really good friends. My son's named after him, so what I always say about Niall is that you hear his heart in his right hand and you hear his soul in the other, right? And so his chord changes on his left hand, what he's doing with those, they're so beautiful and so pretty. If you take a song like Lost in Music or We Are Family, if you break that down, they're very romantic sounding. So much is made of like what he's doing on the right hand, like Get Lucky or whatever. But actually, people almost take for granted what he's doing on the other hand, which is the tune. With Niall, I learned about his MO. So it took a long time for people, when I used to mention him, to go, well, I'm the guy at the Smiths, how does he sound like? How does he relate to Nile Rodgers? Well, I used to like that Niall used to work with a lot of different artists. Diana Ross, In Excess, Duran Duran, David Bowie. Now that people know 40 years later what my MO is, if you like, and how I'm motivated and what I do, there's a lot of similarities between me and Niall, and he was the only other guitarist in the 90s that I could relate to, because he was the only other guy who worked with loads and loads of different bands and made records with different bands, and it wasn't weird.
Bus stop, wet day, she's there, I say, please share my...
Another guitar-led band that meant so much to Johnny Marr and his parents was the Hollies and Bus Stop. Next, another of Johnny's favourite guitarists is Mark Bolan with his band T-Rex. It's Jeepster.
You're so sweet, you're so fine.
So there you go. You mentioned Mark earlier on at the beginning of the week. Why have you chosen that from T-Rex?
The amazing thing about this record, I can't quite believe this myself, that was the first record I ever bought, with my own money. And I
went to the shop, got the actual vinyl.
And I was 9, which is a pretty... I'm going to say it, it's a pretty cool first record for a 9-year-old, but it wasn't that I was so cool. There was a little box of X-Chart 45s in this furniture shop, and I was flicking through it, and I had whatever it was, 10 pence or whatever to buy the record. And this record, Jeepster, unusually, the label of it had a photograph of Mark Bolan and Mickey Finn on it, the guy in his band. And I thought, oh, well, this is worth 10 pence. And he looked amazing on it, and there was just something super evocative and mysterious about this photo, got this guy with makeup on and everything. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have that. I just figured I was getting more from a book, right? So I got it. So it being the first record I owned, I was going to love it no matter what. But anyway, when I played it, I couldn't believe it, because even back then it sounded like a retro record, because what was in the charts, talking 73, 74, was the Osmonds, at the Carpenters. There was a lot of glossy soul in the charts, and I heard this thing and it sounded like ancient, because it does sound like a rock and roll record, and weirdly modern at the same time, the way he was singing, and I knew it was a bit dark and cool, and it was a little scary, frankly, for a 9-year-old, but I loved the guitar in it, and I played it again and played it again.
And at 9, were you aware that the guitar was for you at this stage?
Yeah. There was something about what the guitar was that I was in. If there was guitar on a record, even on the schlocky stuff, my ear would go up and I'd analyse it. And my mother used to say, well, John doesn't so much as listen to records as analyse it. And luckily for me, because I was obsessed with the guitar, as I've said, the time when I was 10, 11, 12, the charts were full of records that were built on guitars. The Sweet, David Bowie, all the glam rock, what we call glam rock stuff, all built on stonking riffs, because all the musicians came out of the 60s beat boom, whether it was the Sweet on Susie Quattro and all the Mud and all these bands. So I was an unashamed, and still am, teeny bopper. These records that were made for essentially 10, 11, 12-year-olds, and they still sound pretty good to this day, some of those records.
Yeah, they do.
As we've just heard, and Jeepster was one of them.
Yeah. At what point then, so we've gone from toy guitar at 5, T-Rex at 9, band with adults at 15, who told you were a great guitarist, and when was it?
And I can tell you exactly when that was. It was October the 5th, 1982, when the Smiths played our very first gig at the Ritz in Manchester. And we came off stage, and my mate, who was much older, who was about to become our manager, when I came off stage, he said to me, I've never seen anyone play like that. And I genuinely went, really? I honestly, because I was so focused on what I needed to get better at. And to be honest with you, this might sound like false modesty, but that's the way I am now. I'm more fixated on how I need to improve, really, technically and otherwise. So people who know me and in these silly books and all of that kind of stuff, oh, Johnny Marr was so cocky, and that was, no one is that flipping confident. You'd have a flipping heart attack. But if I was really like the way I've been portrayed in certain books, I kind of played up to that sort of hustly kind of, it's my own fault in a way, sort of played up to that role a little bit too well. The truth of the matter was, like a lot of people of that age, I was going for it. I knew that me and my band that's the early Smiths were special. I had a lot of belief in the other members of the band, but I had to be told that I was good. A little bit before that, a lot of my mates were guitar players. I lived on this massive castle estate in Withenshaw, south of Manchester. I couldn't believe how many guitar players there were. Just loads of them. And we all sort of like got together, and the thing is that I was able to play Rebel Rebel without sticking my tongue out. Right? And that was my party piece.
Sticking your tongue had meant that you were concentrating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I wasn't grimacing. But one of my pals could play whatever, some Jimi Hendrix riff, and another one could play the Who or whatever. So we were all learning from each other, but that was my sort of party piece, that I could play Rebel Rebel, which actually, if you listen to it, it doesn't really sound that different from what I do. You know, it's got this big ringing thing. So I had a little bit of a sense that I knew I had a knack for it.
Well, I think a lot of people will find it inspiring that you still want to get better.
Oh, yeah.
With everything that you've achieved.
Oh, yeah, practice. I mean, I tell my management now, but I have to put time in the calendar when I'm doing stuff, set aside time to honour my practice time. You know, that's because otherwise your time just gets eaten up with other stuff.
There's parents listening to this now who are going to play that back to their kids.
Oh, sorry.
No, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, well, you know what, but I didn't have to be told to practice, mate. I had to be told to stop.
We've talked about disco quite a bit with your relationship with Nile Rodgers, but we've picked this one, Disco Stomp by Hamilton Bohannon. There you go. I had to pause then because I think I don't want to get it wrong. Yeah, but Hamilton Bohannon, why have you picked this?
I picked this one because I used to be, well, I probably still am, fairly obsessive. And when this record came out, it was really unusual sounding. And back then, the way I was able to hear a song that I really loved was I had to hover around the radio until it was played again. Because, you know, we didn't have one of those machines that, you know, it wasn't a cassette player. It was just the radio. And I would wait for the next DJ, whoever it was on Radio 1, to play it. And that's what I remember about this song. But the interesting thing about this song, for some people may already know this though, is that what happened was I got snagged by this very simple, as you'll hear, this just really straightforward guitar that just goes jinka 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 jinka. It's not clever at all, but it's perfect. And then maybe 20 years later, when I came to do the Smiths' How Soon Is Now, with a bit of lateral thinking, I just wanted it to sound like Disco Stomp. Now, I am aware, having said that if you listen to How Soon Is Now, you kind of go, what? But I'm going to call artistic license. I mean, it's the truth, but that's what art's about, really. You know, putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5.
Yeah. It's a big statement, that, Johnny.
Yeah, it's true. So when I wrote it, in my mind, I was like, oh, great, it's got a bit of disco stomp in it. And then what happened was with How Soon Is Now, Bohannon morphed into Bo Diddley. So How Soon Is Now is Bo Diddley and Bohannon. You can't really go wrong with that, can you?
Well, let's be honest, it worked.
Everybody doing disco stuff. Everybody doing disco stuff.
Wow, I tell you what, that really does bring back memories. Disco Stomp by Hamilton Bohannon. And there are some great moves on that video as well. I'm Vernon Kay and you're listening to Johnny Marr picking his tracks of my years. And this next pick is Bob and Marcia and Young, Gifted and Black.
Young, gifted and black.
Oh, what I love to say.
To me, young, gifted and black. Is
The reason I picked Young, Gifted and Black is it's a very subjective thing, this, but I feel that I come from a generation of British kids who were very lucky to hear pop music on the radio, because it was what pop meant to me back then. Was it was eccentric. We're talking about in the 70s. It was also huge. Radio 1, Radio 2 were massive, you know, and so what was in the charts, okay, people in factory workers in Edinburgh were hearing at exactly the same time as machinists and people who worked in shops in Bristol. Everyone in the country was listening to the same thing at the same time. Radio was so big. Again, I know it's subjective, but I listen back to some of those records that I got hooked on as a kid, like Disco Stomp from yesterday. But this one, not only is it uplifting, but it's quirky and weird and unusual and diverse. So you can, as you can hear, this is essentially, it's Jamaican music, and so you've got millions and millions of people loving ska music. And then the other thing was that, you know, it's not that much of a leap for people to hear that this eventually went and influenced the Smiths song Girlfriend in a Coma. So all of that stuff goes in, and much like Disco Stomp, it comes out.
Awesome. If there's one genre of music that you haven't particularly tried...
Oh, in a second, heavy metal.
But have you sat at home and ripped out some power chords?
Yeah, oh yeah, I've done that. I did that this morning, because it's fun.
Right.
But you know what? You can't like everything. It's fine. I'm absolutely fine with it. I think I know what people get from it. I just don't need that.
Yeah, fair enough. The next track you picked is Iggy and the Stooges, Gimme Danger.
Well, the thing with Gimme Danger is that I was writing a song on an acoustic guitar when I was about 14, and my mate Billy Duffy comes up in this one as well, again, because as I said, me and my mates used to hang out at one of my friend's houses. He had quite liberal parents and very encouraging parents, and they didn't mind 4 or 5 of his mates, one of those being me, piling in pretty much every evening after school and playing guitar and smoking cigs and listening to music and everything. And anyway, I was playing this song I was working on that thought I was writing, and Billy said to me, "Oh, Gimme Danger, right?" And I went, "What's Gimme Danger?" And he said, "Oh, that sounds exactly like Gimme Danger, Iggy and the Stooges." So I thought I better find out what the hell Gimme Danger is, because if someone's on my turf here. And anyway, within a couple of weeks, I'd bought the album that it's from, which is Raw Power. And if you look at the cover of Raw Power, it's just this really arresting, crazy image of Iggy Pop. Believe it or not, he's got no shirt on. And from 73, looking like an iguana, and beautiful and crazy. And just the sleeve alone is quite arresting, as I say, and it's very symbolic of what rock and roll, the promise of rock and roll is. So before I even heard it, I was like, oh, I think my life's changed. And then when I got it home and I put on Gimme Danger, it not only sounded exactly like the song I was trying to write, but it gave me a little bit of a roadmap, and I went, oh no, yeah, you're on the right track here. Because I didn't know what I was doing, whether it was any good, or it just was like how I expressed myself, really. The songs I was writing myself, I'd migrated, or I'd upgraded rather, from being 11 and 12, writing these kind of T-Rex knockoffs, to then trying to get a bit more sophisticated in my songwriting. And then the song I was writing of mine sounded exactly the same chords and the same riff as Gimme Danger. So I thought, oh, I'm onto something here, really. And do more of that. If I had to pick the top 10 albums, what I think are the best records of all time, it's never left that top 10 for me, because it does so much of what rock and even roll is supposed to do. It's sexy, it's illicit, which implies another world. It's otherworldly, should we say, and it's dangerous, and all of those things were like, I was just like, okay, at 15 I was like, where do I sign up for this?
So would you say that moment when Billy turned around and said, hang on a minute, that sounds like Gimme Danger, that's the first kind of foundation or the blueprint for the band, for the Smiths?
Yeah, I'd say that was right. Yeah, I think the blueprint was laid then, really, because the guitar playing on that technique is in a lot of my stuff.
What do you know what I find fascinating is that you found your individuality very early. You weren't jumping on, let's say, a certain style of music, or you were taking influences from everywhere, and then your individuality like literally blossomed.
Well, partly it's my personality probably being a bit intense, taking it very seriously. What I'm doing really seriously, not necessarily myself, but thinking it was the most important thing in the world, learning to play a certain type of guitar. I was never wanting to play flamenco or classical. You know what I mean, which is technically dazzling, but I wanted to do what ended up doing what I'm doing now, you know. But and the other side of it was that back then, what you've mentioned, the singularity, that was a really important part of being a rock fan and being a rock musician. It's funny that it's crossed my mind over the last few years whether that's still in the culture or not, but in what I was doing, everybody had to have their own thing.
Well, it's definitely jumped out from everything we've talked about from Monday to where we are now Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of... We're at full steam ahead now with all that you've created, the stories that you've told to get to where you are in the early 80s. And then I assume we're about to form the band, the Smiths. But that individuality as a player, as a guitarist, is like... It's you. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, well, it was almost like it's not worth doing unless that you're distinctive. It's like you're only second best, or you're only a substitute, really. So I think in a way that was the goal, as much as just like, being able to play Rebel without putting your tongue out. The goal was to also eventually have your own distinctive. What is it you're saying? It honestly, genuinely wasn't about being out by a swimming pool.
Give me danger, little stranger.
Johnny Marr's next couple of choices are once again guitar classics. Iggy and the Stooges and Gimme Danger, followed by a classic from Neil Young, It's Like a Hurricane.
Once I thought I saw you in a crowd.
The thing about Neil Young was that he's now... Everyone in the culture knows Neil Young, and you think of him as this, what he is really, this... almost like he's like something from, Mount Rushmore. He's this thing who's always been there, and he appears to be slightly cranky and cantankerous, and this cantankerous old geezer with an old guitar playing an old noise, right? And proud of it, and loads of attitude, right? When he was young, he was a young, cantankerous, old, like immovable person, but, a lot of people don't really imagine, like, what Neil Young's been, young and everywhere. But when I was growing up, he was kind of, he was like one of the kings, really, because he was so uncompromising. That was the thing. He'd put out an album that was massive, say Harvest or whatever, and then the following album would be Tonight's Tonight, which was just a dirge. And I mean, it's brilliant, but to most people's ears, it was so uncommercial, and the record company didn't want to release it. And he was so willful and went his own way. Now, back in the time I came from, that was really admirable. Aside from that, he wrote some killer songs. But anyway, when he put this out, he was almost like king of the alt music scene. It would have been 77 or 78. And me and my mates were, you know, grooving around to bands like Blondie and The Cars and all of this sort of stuff. And he was already this sort of you know, major figure, as I say. And then this song came out, and it was wow, what the hell is this? You were able to like Iggy, and you're also able to like Neil Young. And me and my mates, who, you know, thought he was a bit of a god, we couldn't believe this song. And it's just a beautiful melody as well. So it you know, it's not just heads down rocking in the free world. It's, you know, as you'll hear, it's just got this beautiful kind of yearning in it.
Right, you're going to be performing 2 live shows in Manchester with an orchestra. Did you write the orchestral parts for that, or did you get together as a collective and put it all together yourselves?
Well, there's a couple of people who have been involved with. A friend of ours who's joined the band for these shows, called Henry. He's been working with these sort of classic rock sort of bands, and a friend of mine just said, look, there's this fantastic musician I think you're going to get along with. So I looked him up, and he came over, and then me, and then also James Doviak, who plays guitar in my band live and who produces my records with me. Between the 3 of us, we started working on the orchestrations, and that was brilliant for me. It was like a dream, really.
Now that we know you after everything we've talked about this week, I would imagine you'd have been like a kid in a sweet shop.
Yeah, no, that's right, really, Vernon. I was going, wow, okay. But once I started hearing exactly what flutes and piccolos did, I was almost going, can I make every one of my songs sound like the Four Tops? Well, can I make some of them sound like the Four Tops, please? More bells. Getting away with it needs bells. So, yeah, you're right. I was exactly like that. And then Fiona, who's conductor and officially up to the orchestrator, she's added her sort of touches to it. So between 4 of us, we've all thrown our 2 penneth in.
And is it a massive celebration of you?
Yeah, it is actually, yeah. To an extent, there was a little bit of pressure on, but this is what you live for, really, isn't it, those moments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, imagine the 5-year-old you with that toy guitar.
Right, yeah.
Stood in front of a massive orchestra.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The boy Marr.
Nice one, yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Oh, what?
Yeah, there's a lot of songs to choose from. Sort of, you know, recent and old, it's come at exactly the right point in my life, I think. If people really like it, then I'll just give people what they want. It'll be an amazing privilege to do it, really. And this new space, new factory space in Manchester, I got shown that, almost like 18 months ago now, 2 years ago, when it was only half built. I was in there, and after about 10 minutes, I have to say, I got a little bit of a lump in my throat, because I'm from Manchester, and I was like, oh man, this is a little bit like our Barbican, or this is a historic space, and it's so well done, and it's so beautiful. And I'm a boy from Manchester, really, and I'm one of the opening bands in this thing. I was filled with a certain kind of civic pride.
Well, that's good. It's better than the Ritz, let's be honest. I think I've stuck to that floor many nights.
No, everybody knows. Yeah, if you've been in there, we all know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So good luck with that.
Thank you,
it sounds absolutely mega. And I think everyone listening, the fact that you said we're going to give people what they want, I mean, I think they know they're in for a treat.
Yeah, I mean, giving people what they want, there's nothing wrong with that, because they're nice people.
Yeah. Oh, that should be on a T-shirt.
You can have that one.
Yeah. Right, we talked about Nile Rodgers from day one, from Monday.
Yeah.
And you've picked Lost in Music, which is our next track. And you said that there's a little bit of a relationship. There's a link between Like a Hurricane and this.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, most people would never connect Neil Young and Chic, but I do have that connection, because me and my mates, when my mum and dad used to go out on a Friday or a Saturday night to go see bands play, me and my sister were in our teens, and we were supposed to be babysitting my little brother. I'm laughing because it's, thank God. So as soon as the car got out of view, about 7 kids would just, the term back then was pile in.
Yeah.
Pile into Johnny's. So records were going on. So my sister was in her bedroom. I was in my bedroom with my mate. So me and my mates, being 15 in the 70s, we'd be sat on the floor cross-legged with our hair in our eyes, listening to Neil, oh man, sitting on the side of the road. It's all very downbeat, and we're all like, yeah, nodding away, yeah man, yeah man. Now, in these paper-thin walls in the room next door to me where my sister and her groovy teenage friends were, it sounded like Studio 54. And all I could hear was just like, freak out! And, you know, after a few Fridays of this, I thought, God, sounds really good in there, you know. Anyway, one night me and my mates were sat down on the floor listening to Neil Young, and my sister popped her head through with these kind of disco moves, and she said, you lot look like you're having a good time, and then sashayed off into her room. I thought, you know what, lads, sorry, I'm just going to... This sounds great, what's going on here. And
as cool as Neil Young is.
Yeah, and the music she was playing just sounded... I just like, what is that? Mm. And she was playing Sister Sledge and Chic, and that's how I got into Nile Rodgers, particularly in disco music. She got me into that, so that's how Neil Young and Chic, you know, got to be together.
Those paper-thin walls in Within Shaw.
Yeah, but I know that. Yeah, exactly. I know officially though, but it's a Sister Sledge record, which is the same sort of thing. But when I heard Lost in Music, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, because this, so as we talked about the other day, so symphonic and beautiful and romantic.
But also the lyrics were lost in music, caught in a trap. I feel so alive.
Yeah, I quit my 9 to 5. Yeah,
come on.
And that was, of course, Lost in Music. Johnny Marr's penultimate pick is This Is The Day, and he heard it first in Matt Johnson's front room, Matt being the lead singer of The.
Why you didn't wake up this morning, 'cause you didn't go to bed, you were watching the white.
Well, this song, aside from being just a beautiful, very, very amazing kind of inspired song, it's a funny one because in 1981, a friend of mine in Manchester said to me, I was in London a couple of nights ago and met this guy last night. I think you and him would really get on. He's a musician and he's started making records. And this was before I was in the Smiths. I didn't have a deal. I was, you know, hustling around, whatever, trying to get a band together. He said, well, he's coming up next week and he's coming up to meet you, because I told him I've got this mate Johnny and he's a guitar player anyway. So Matt Johnson, who is the came up to Manchester the following week. The two of us were just off the dole, and it was one of those meetings where we just hit it off straight away. Lee said to me, listen, I've had some interest from record companies, and instead of being solo, I'm going to form a band and I'm going to call it The. Come and join. And I said to him, I don't have the train fare. If I'm able to get some money together, we'll do it. Let's do it. But I'm skint and I'd love to, but I can't. So he said to me, hey, look, well, never mind, but if you're ever in London, come and crash on my couch. So sometime after, I formed the Smiths then, and we did our first single, which was paid for by our then manager. And I was looking for a record deal for the Smiths, and we wanted to be on Rough Trade. So I phoned the person I knew who had a sofa in London and called Matt Johnson. Hey, do you remember me? And I went into his house, his front room, and he says, oh, excuse the mess. And he's got a guitar on the floor, and he had this, what was back then called a Porter Studio, a little 4-track recording device, and a couple of little bits of equipment on the floor. I'd never seen anyone record like that before, because I'd just been in bands where, you know, like, there's the drummer, you stand there, he's the singer. And this guy was doing this demo on the floor, and he said, oh, I've just been up all night. And I went, oh, let's have a listen. And he pressed play, and I put the headphones on, and it was this song, This Is The Day. I was the first person to hear it. I thought, do you do this every day? Is this the quality of stuff that you're writing? Because I need to up my game, man.
Wow.
So Matt then went his way and he made the first few other albums with different musicians, and we sort of kept in touch. And I went on to do the Smiths, and then when the Smiths split up, he said to me, come on then, come and be in the band. You can afford the train fare now. I'm like, okay. And at the time...
You're still having the sofa though.
Yeah. But at the time in '89, it was, all hell broke loose. Oh, Johnny Marr's left the Smiths. He's joined the London. He's joined, and me and Matt were like, and I was in the band then for about 4 or 5 years, and did some stuff that I'm really proud of, and I can't believe it. You know, we did it really. But that was a real moment hearing this song for the first time.
Yeah, I bet. Right, the last track of the week, and before we play Pet Shop Boys, Love Comes Quickly, we've got to talk about your book as well. I mean, it's very simple. It's Marr's Guitars.
Yeah, the clue's in the title.
And it's a cracker. It's really thick. It's what you would describe as a coffee table book.
Yeah, that was the idea, yeah.
And is it your collection of guitars, or is it your admiration of the guitar? What exactly is it?
My inspiration for it, I wanted it to be a coffee table book, and I wanted it to be an art book, primarily, that just happened to be about my guitars. And it's about, I think there's about 100 and odd guitars in there that are all mine. And the very first inspiration came about because of a friend of mine who's an amazing photographer, Pat Graham, and he takes these really, as you'll see, super close-up, abstract-y, arty, beautiful photographs of instruments. So sometimes you go, what is that? Is that like a landscape in Iceland or something?
Well, it is one of those kind of mystery picture kind of things. You know, you zoom in and the detail is unbelievable.
Yeah, so he pioneered this thing with macro lenses a long time ago. So you give him you'd say, right, take a picture of my guitar, and it'd come back and he'd say, oh, I really like the rust on that switch there. And you go, wow, it's a beautiful picture. So that was the main inspiration. As I started to put it together, I realised that all of these guitars had loads of stories. You know, the guitar that I did How Soon Is Now on, and the guitar that I did This Charming Man with, and all of these different songs right up into the most recent one, which was the Bond film, and No Time to Die with Billie Eilish. It starts with me in my bedroom, a photograph that was taken by my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, in 1981 with me with this guitar. And even that guitar's got a story, because I traded that in when I formed the Smiths, and then my mate, who's this guitar collector, he found it in a record shop about 4 years ago.
No way.
About 4 years ago, I got that guitar back.
It's a really obvious question.
I know what you're going to say. Do I play them all?
No. Do you have a favourite?
Actually, you know, I do have a favourite, because it is the one, funny enough, that I designed with Fender in 2011. But there was the version that I used on the Bond movie, and I used with Billie Eilish. That one particular one which is called Comet Sparkle, because the finish that was made on it. Yeah, I toured with that a lot. The thing about that is, if we come full circle, that little boy, you know, I was so fixated on the guitar. The fact that I got to make my own with Fender, and I'm very, very honoured to say it's been very successful. Not all because of me, by any means, but because of people who've been involved with it. I would have never... God, I would never thought that was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Of course I do.
How did that happen?
Mate, I do this for a living. Of course I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's amazing, right? Yeah,
it's crazy. The last track we're going to play is Pet Shop Boys and Love Comes Quickly.
The thing about Love Comes Quickly by Pet Shop Boys, they have quite a number of songs that do this. Like, when it starts, you go, oh, yeah, this is great. And then within about 20, 30 seconds, you just go, wow, I need to listen to this song more often. I love this song. When it came out, it was a really, interesting time in music, I think. And then in my time, if I think about something that can personify the very best of what British pop music can sound like, you've got people like David Bowie, people like New Order. But I kind of have to say that I sort of think, hand on heart, no one really does it better than Pet Shop Boys.
Do you realise, or has it taken you quite a while to realise the importance of that period from mid to late 80s, early 90s? You touched a lot of lives.
Yeah.
In my generation.
To answer your question, over the years, I do see that now. We were quite a weird band considering how big we were, really. Or the other way around, we were quite big for a weird band.
Right, yeah.
I see the correlation entirely between us and the Pet Shop Boys. I don't know whether it was Neil, but someone once said Pet Shop Boys are the Smiths that you can dance to.
And we'll leave it at that.
You could live your life lonely. To everyone.
That was, of course, Pet Shop Boys and Love Comes Quickly. My thanks to Johnny Marr, and I hope you found that fantastic Tracks of My Years as fascinating as I did. It was a joy to do, it really was. To those of you lucky enough to have tickets, enjoy his orchestral shows at the Aviva Studios in Manchester on December the 7th and 8th, and of course that fabulous picture book, Marr's Guitars, and his first solo compilation album, Spirit Power, the best of Johnny Marr.